Hi everyone, welcome to another episode in our Jenerise Creatine Distributor Series. They're a series where I'm introducing you to the partners that we've chosen to bring Jenerise Creatine to market. Today I'm really excited to be joined by Jordan Donohue, who I met in person last year in Barcelona, and we've come a really long way to have an agreement in place to bring Jenerise Creatine to the UK and Western Europe as well. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure's mine, and I'm going to give people a bit of a snapshot about who you are and Fayrefield Nutratek as well. So for those of you listening who do not know, Fayrefield Nutratek is the newest company in the Fayrefield Foods Group. And this is a joint venture between Fayrefield UK and Denmark, actually, who have collectively turned over €500 million in 2025 alone. The business primarily focuses on operating across three areas, which are protein commodity trading, as well as functional protein solutions, and not to forget also the food service protein solutions too. Empowered by the Fayrefield ecosystem, Nutratek and Jordan has offices, production sites and warehousing across the UK and also Ireland, Iberia, Germany and the Nordics. The company is headed up by Jordan himself, who prior to starting this business worked for over 10 years in the sports nutrition sector. And Jordan has experience in every single part of the value chain, having worked for world-leading brands and ingredient manufacturers, but also third-party manufacturers of supplements and ingredient distributors. And that's pretty much how our conversation started in Barcelona last year. You were waxing lyrical about things I'd never heard about at that time, like GOS was a big part of the conversation, and of course, creatine. So, Jordan, why don't you catch me up on kind of how Nutratek and Jenerise have come to be at this point today, and the journey also between you and my dad over the last year?
Sure. Yeah. So we met, as you mentioned, we met at Vita Foods, the first Vita Foods that was in Barcelona, 2025, I believe, at the Nutra Ingredients Awards party. Completely random meeting. We didn't know each other. We literally just started talking in the middle of the event. Hey, who are you? What do you do? Blah de blah de blah. And I think there was a natural rapport, or at least that's how I felt when I met you guys. And I think your father's story is obviously extremely unique, and I just thought you guys were some of the coolest people I'd ever met. And then we struck it off from there. We stayed in touch, just talking markets, sports nutrition, supplements, and obviously creatine. And I think as your journey progressed, it was becoming quite obvious that you were going to enter the market, and there was an opportunity for us to collaborate with you guys. We weren't entirely sure what form that collaboration was going to take, but we just stayed close and just carried on talking. And then fast forward, the opportunity came to bring Jenerise's Creatine precision grade to the market, and I just thought this is an opportunity of a lifetime to enter the creatine space with something really different. And now we're here. We're now your official partner, and we're hoping to do some good things across Western Europe with your product.
No doubt that that's going to happen. And that night at that party was interesting for me because I met you, and then I met Dan Richardson, who is now our lead nutritionist and my co-lead on the education program. So it was sort of like divine intervention. We met two very important people that night. Yeah. And I said to my dad afterwards, like, I really can see us working with Jordan in some capacity. Of course, at that time, a lot of your questions were about our liquid stable ingredient, which is still under development. And so launching Jenerise Creatine to the UK and Western European market is going to really lay that foundation of trust and bringing brands on board to understand how we work and what Jenerise offers, and then being able to really have a pipeline ready for liquid stable once we're ready to kick all of that off. And Fayrefield Nutratek is going to be such a good partner to see us through those future evolutions as well. What was the moment where Fayrefield Nutratek, yourself, Jordan, really knew it was time to onboard a branded creatine ingredient? And we've seen so much growth in creatine, so much hype and social media trends on creatine. But what really sort of pushed you over the line and said, okay, now is the time to take this really seriously and make a deal?
The moment for me was when Steve and yourself revealed to me what you had planned. So what you had planned with your product, your brand, the direction that you were hoping to travel, and some of your strategy around how you were going to achieve that. In that moment, I just thought this is an opportunity of a lifetime for us to onboard a branded creatine ingredient that really has something different about it. Furthermore, I was also a little bit like, we have to take this golden opportunity right now. We just have to say yes. And to use a bit of a colloquial phrase, you shake someone's hand and you rip their arm off. I was just like, I need to shake their hand immediately and get involved before somebody else does. And I know that there were many suitors as well. I think a lot of people in the market saw what you guys were doing and saw what you were about, and wanted to be involved. And so, yeah, that was the moment when it all crystallized for me.
It's been interesting choosing a distributor for the UK because that's where we're from. The story started there. Ergomax launched from, the north of England. And so like the story kind of is coming back full circle. And for some reason, Steve and I felt like the decision for distribution for the UK, in retrospect, it's been the one that has had sort of the most for us to figure out around it. I can be really candid about that. Like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand was just like one option, straight go, no reason to say no, no reason to question it, and we were onboarded. The UK, probably because more people know who Steve is in the UK, we had much more, just sort of interest and people asking and looking around. And then for that reason, it's also just been a big decision for us to take really, really seriously. And we're super excited to be able to work with Fayrefield Nutratek because we've spent a year building that relationship with you. And then now we're also seeing the value that you can bring to help us actually execute the strategy and the vision that we've got for the ingredient, which is by no means small. So it really needs to be in good hands, which I'm really, really happy about. So you must have a vision. You've got the vision for Nutratek, the greater vision for Fayrefield, which has been around for decades. How does Creatine 1 fit into that? And at both levels, what's the vision?
The vision for Nutratek is to become one of the premier suppliers of ingredients, functional solutions, and food service solutions to like the wider health space. So I think traditionally, obviously, I would have said sports nutrition because that's my background, but the lines are blurring every day, and ingredients are now becoming ubiquitous in their use. Protein is no longer just within sports nutrition; it's all over the show, and creatine is following the same path. However, historically, despite me being a creatine user and being a huge fan of creatine in general, it's never really interested me from a business perspective because it's really difficult business. It's often a traded product. It's very difficult to keep your hooks in at a customer. There's not necessarily a very obvious value to your creatine versus somebody else's creatine. And so it's a lot of squeeze for not much juice is probably the way I would describe creatine traditionally, at least from Nutratek's perspective. That being said, pretty much everyone who buys protein in the sort of European health nutrition space is also buying creatine. And I think with what we've got going on the protein side, I think it was a natural marriage. from a business perspective, we already have very well established networks into pretty much all of the people in the space who are already buying creatine. So I just thought to myself, if we can thread the needle here with this, we're bringing something innovative that has true value via the Jenerise and Creatine 01 product. It just makes perfect sense.
What I've noticed is that people have spent the good part of a year following us from an education perspective, joining our webinars, newsletter, all of the community that we've built around, the future of creatine and all of that. And people have been so curious, okay, but what are you launching? Are you doing a B2C? Are you coming back with Ergomax? Are you somebody even thought, is Steve acquiring Maxim again and turning Maxim back into a creatine brand? It's been wild. And so coming out of the woodwork, this week, as this episode's coming out during our launch week, it's going to be really interesting to see people's response to that. And it's really, really important to make sure that, creatine is being positioned and our flagship ingredient is being positioned in the most accurate way from the get-go. And your understanding of protein and all of that expertise that Nutratek has, it's just such a natural marriage, like you said. And, we own creatinification.com. I bought it like 2 years ago. I haven't done anything with it yet, but we see creatine following in protein's footsteps. And so it's really important to us to, partner with distributors that have the playbook of what happened to protein pretty much ingrained in your DNA, and then be able to, take us on that ride with you. Or go on that ride together rather, and take creatine in the same direction as well. It's really, really exciting. So what are you most looking forward to about the ingredient? And I love to talk about, okay, it's tasteless, it's not bitter, it dissolves clear, it dissolves fast. I've been adding it to all sorts of things in the last couple of months here at home. You can really push out the envelope in terms of formulation development and product usage and stuff. But what really kind of excites you the most for the brands that are going to get their hands on it?
What I'm most excited about is the value that Jenerise and Creatine 1 can bring to the brands that use it. Everyone talks about things like how good ours is in application and how good ours is at doing this or doing that, but I think a lot of people miss the actual value of the brand itself and what it lends to the finished product that contains it. Whether that's your quality, your dedication to controlling impurities in the product and maintaining, some of the highest grade specs in the entire industry, if not the highest grade in the entire industry. But alongside that, you've got Steve's origin story, which I think is almost a hugely unfair advantage, but it's a crazy backstory, and the way things have gone full circle as well, I think, gives the Creatine 1 and Jenerise brand something that no other brand can actually manufacture. It's impossible to manufacture an origin story like that. But then also some of the stuff that you're doing on the content side, the stuff you're doing with your key opinion leaders on the science, and the way you are almost transforming the way creatine is perceived out in the market. That's what excites me the most, because that's really what a brand is. A brand is not a logo on a spec sheet. It's a lot more than that, and I think you guys have multiple fronts where you are seriously way far ahead of the pack. And I'm most excited about seeing those things play out in the market.
Yeah, when I realized that my dad had pretty much, handed down to me like a Madison Avenue marketing agency's like absolute dream of a origin story, I knew then we can't just put this to bed. We need to actually fully, kickstart it and give it a new lease of life. And, we're not selling on a story. It's not enough as a crux when you're talking about health and wellness and safety and efficacy of an ingredient. But I do believe that Jenerise has very, very, very strong core assets that also, I'm speaking as a founder here, like we really can't mess up. I don't know how much more clearly to state that. Like my dad has so much to live up to. I've put my, face and shifted my entire career to, bring this all to life. And we've also spent a year, putting together what to some people might seem like quite a simple product launch. It is a creatine monohydrate powder, and so we've taken it really, really seriously. And it's important to have distribution partners that see the value in that and then can translate that to, the brands and the founders that might be listening today, and they're looking for the next best creatine for their products. So I love hearing you talk about it, and I'm flattered with the compliments on it all. And so to wrap up for today, I mean, in my mind, you're like the protein guy. That's what I said after we met you in Barcelona. I was like, oh, Dad, what did you think to the protein guy? But now you're going to be also a creatine guy. Like we're folding you into our side of the team as well. And so what's your sort of personal story with creatine, Jordan? Has it been on your radar for decades, like many other people, or did you actually not really dabble in it until more recently?
Compared to some of the people that you've had as guests, or maybe not guests, but features in some of your articles and stuff, I'm a toddler with creatine. I started using creatine in 2004, so I've been using it for over 20 years now. I used to play a bit of basketball, and we used to take ourselves a little bit too seriously, and so around about 2004 was when sort of like athletes doing some extracurricular weight training like became a thing. And like pretty much everyone else of my age, I found myself in places like the bodybuilding.com forums, Muscle Talk in the UK, and creatine was a thing even then for bodybuilders, and it was used for its obvious benefits around exercise, around the anaerobic threshold, but also back then people would talk a lot about driving nutrients into the muscle. The water retention was actually seen as a positive thing because it made you look bigger, it made the muscles look bigger, and obviously you could train harder as well and get more out of your sessions because of it. So it was a pretty obvious whey protein and creatine. I think most of us started with whey protein and creatine. I was using back then it was Body Fortress from Holland and Barrett, and I'll be careful what I say here because I don't want to get in trouble, but the product was horrendous. And what I mean by horrendous is not that the product lacked efficacy, but back then, pretty much all creatine was turning into a clump in the tub. It didn't dissolve at all. It was like putting grains of sand in your mouth, but we suffered it. Those were also the days when loading of creatine was a big thing. So you had to take huge amounts of creatine for like 10 days, and then you would drop the amount down. That's sort of my journey with creatine. It sort of came through basketball and then wanting to get in better shape and then lifting weights. And then when you get into lifting weights, you end up getting into supplements, usually whey and creatine. But I have memories of, and I know there's a fair few of us on the internet who have this shared memory, but I have memories of it being on top of the fridge and it having pictures of muscles on it. They always had like a muscle guy on the tub back then, and my mum thought it was steroids. What are you doing taking that? Be careful. But it was just creatine, and it was really safe. So that's my personal story with creatine, and I've got some on my desk right now. So still taking it.
Very good. Fantastic. I love hearing everybody's stories, and it finds us in different ways, and for some people it's like knocking on the door for decades, and then some penny drops and you realize, oh, now would be the right time. And that's what it was like for me. I grew up with my dad talking about creatine for decades, but it wasn't until my late 20s where I developed an autoimmune disorder that I finally started supplementing with creatine to kind of take ownership again of my metabolism and my energy system. So thanks for sharing. I love it. What's it like to work with Nutratek? And for anybody listening who's, going to get in touch after listening to this episode, what can they expect from Nutratek or the Fayrefield team and Jordan in specifically? And also maybe outline exactly which regions of the European countries you're going to be taking ownership of.
Sure. I think I like to think that working with Nutratek is pretty easy. We're flexible. We have all of the benefits of a extremely large food company. So, for example, BRC, GFSI, logistics, customs clearance, local offices across Europe. We have all of those benefits, but I like to think we have none of the bureaucracy, meaning that we're still pretty agile, we're still very entrepreneurial, and we can do things that some other businesses either cannot do, or they're at a size and a scale and a sort of by design, their architecture, they can't do certain things, whether it's something as simple as breaking down a pallet because you just want a couple of 100 kilos of Jenerise, all the way through to you want to lock in a half-year contract and you want regular containers on the water, customs cleared for you in your destination. We can pretty much do it all, and I like to think we've got a little bit of a flair when we do it as well, but I'll let the people who work with us decide that. In terms of regions, yeah, we have the UK and Ireland, we have Iberia, which is Portugal and Spain, we have Germany, France, and the Nordics. And we have offices in the UK, Ireland, Denmark, Spain, Germany. And in France, we don't have an office, but we have people on the ground. So yeah, we can service all of those regions in an agile and an entrepreneurial manner, and hopefully, we can support people's growth journey when it comes to creatine products containing Jenerise.
Fantastic. It's really exciting, and we've been so committed to launching out the gate with multiple regions, and so we've landed, I think we'll have 6 at the time of launch actually this week when people are listening, which is fantastic, and we're only going to grow from there, and there's more announcements to be made as well. So I'm really honored to have you to be one of our distributors, especially managing the motherland. We're not there at the moment, so it's really nice to have you on the ground in the Manchester area and take care of Creatine 1 for us. So for anybody listening, I'll put the Nutratek links and Jordan's contact information in the description box, and if you're on LinkedIn, I'm sure that Jordan won't mind if you drop him a DM and just get in touch directly. So thanks for joining us, Jordan, and I'm looking forward to working together.
Thank you for having me.